Hi guys, welcome to the video. Okay, so we are continuing the garden party and we're going to start today with kind of easing into some florals and some different ways that we can kind of look at these types of things. So I'm just showing you here a couple of things that over the last couple of weeks I have been doing kind of like an end of day paint, just a really fun kind of paint session and just very creative. So I'm calling these garden fractals, and it's just little color palettes and parts of things that I may have seen or heard, even like the frogs. We've had so many really loud frogs at the minute. So so I just have kind of done this, and I thought this would be a really nice way to kind of ease into the actual floral painting videos. So the next video we're going to start working on tulips, or in 2 weeks we're going to start working on tulips, which some of that is a little bit more difficult. So I thought this would be just a really nice way to kind of pare back the kind of maybe pressure, or just, you know, the more difficult elements and aspects, and think about watercolor in quite a fun way. It's a very unique medium. There are a lot of nuances and ways to kind of control the water and things like that. So I thought this is a really good jumping off point to work on those things in a very fun and sort of more low-key way. So you can see these beautiful anemones, and we're going to kind of use those as our base for these kind of more abstracted flowers. So you can use the footage there as references, and then I'm just using a piece of the Conte Paris charcoal. You could use any kind of drawing tools that you have, and I'm just kind of looking at the shapes there and drawing some of these things out to kind of see. You can see here, like, I usually start with the middle petal, the side petals, and then kind of fill in, is one larger or smaller. I kind of look at them in reference to those ones that I've already put down, where they fall on the sides. Is it taller? Is it shorter? And things like that. You can see it's not a very detailed drawing. I might put in a little bit of shading, but basically it's just a way to start to get your hand-eye coordination working and kind of get those reference points in for where you want to draw your subject. So you can see for the leaves, it's kind of an elongated kind of S curve with some curves going forwards and backwards. They're very nice lines within a painting to kind of lead the eye around, and some larger, some shorter, and that's very much how the leaves feel. They're very kind of haphazard, but just a very interesting element to the actual flower. And then I might also draw just a smaller version of a flower here. So you can see I'm not trying to be too technical here. I'm just sort of looking for the flow of those petals, how they're overlapping, maybe where they're overlapping, and so we'll kind of look at that a little bit more. You can see here is another one that I did. This is just with the Technalo, the Caran d'Ache Technalo. It's a watercolor graphite pencil, and then I would dip it in water and use the side, and you get kind of a thicker line there as well. You can just make it quite an interesting exercise here. You can also use inks, and again, like supplies that you have collected. I mean, that's the whole point of this. Not exactly to use exactly what I'm using here, but just to show you that you can use the supplies that you've collected in really fun and exciting ways. So, you know, you might really like Inktense blocks or just other watercolor pencils or things like that, the neo colors. So you know, feel free to use anything like that, for these kind of sketches. The other thing I did is just a 2-page printable. So I will link these as soon as they're in the shop. I'll list them below the painting. But you can use these to create the flowers as well. If you want to do a very like faint line, and then you can, paint on top of that. So I also put these emblems in my paintings today. So I put those on the printable for you. And I just wanted to show you as well, when I'm looking at these, I am usually doing a series of sort of curves. Like this is the little kind of top medallion at the top. And then I do like curves with kind of very quick sort of leaf type shapes in the middle. So I'm just kind of showing you a little bit larger here. They're not necessarily like, you don't have to be too particular here or worried if you don't get the line exactly right. It's more of an abstracted way to kind of do these acanthus type leaves and these emblems. And I do have a couple of older videos on kind of how I put those together. I also put on here this emblem that we did together in a few videos ago. And then you can see there like the emblems in the paintings from today. These would also be really nice just to print out and tape up on your wall, maybe next to your desk or somewhere that you'll see them, to start to sort of get a visual kind of knowledge of them. Like your brain starts to kind of take that in, even without you kind of doing any more sort of thought about it. Okay, so here we're going to start the painting, and again you can see like with the drawing, I'm starting with the middle petal, and I've got the one on the side there that I'm using as a reference. I had just done that one late one night, so I'm just using that kind of as a reference. Again, you can see I'm being very experimental with the colours here and just mixing or grabbing colours as I go and kind of letting them mix on the page. But this first way that we're doing it is we are going to create the flower, and we're actually using wet on dry, so the wet paint on the dry paper, and then we're going to go around and do some wet on wet around that. So we have kind of our central focal flower, and then everything about that's around that's kind of going to be in the background and more abstracted. It's a really nice way to keep like your focal image sharp. But yeah, so then you can see we're just adding in the petals, the next petals, and I did let the other petals dry a little bit. So again, this is where you can let them kind of run into each other if you want. You can let them dry. You can see I'm using a bit of a softer color here for these ones. But if you don't want them to run, then you do need to let those first 3 petals dry. Last year when we did the magnolias, we let them fully dry, and then we kind of painted the entire petal on top to give that transparent look. But I just kind of filled in a little bit in the gaps there. I didn't really do the full thing. But so then I'm just going in and again painting these leaves, And really just playing with colour and shape here. You can see that I'm using the line to kind of lead your eye around the page, and I'm using different types of greens as well. In watercolor, we start with the lightest values and then build up. So I've started with the lighter greens and yeah, just adding kind of little bits and pieces into each other, and then we will take some even darker greens and kind of add those in as well. Okay, so I am kind of finishing off the little bits of leaves here, and what you can see is that when I'm going over with a different color or a darker color, I'm changing the line a little bit. So I'm going to the left or right of where I've already painted, so that you get the kind of multi-layered effect of those leaves and this kind of movement around the painting. And then we're going to let this dry just for a little bit. You can see that I have not been using very much water on my brush. I've very much more been using more pigment so that the paper doesn't get too wet. It doesn't take too long for that to dry. And so then I can go around and wet the rest of the paper here. So I'm being a little bit more careful around the flower and around the leaves, but not necessarily too careful. And then I'm just bending the paper there so it kind of goes flat. And then I just start dropping in a background color. So I do this fairly lightly to begin with so that we can kind of add other things in. But yeah, I do change the like the mixture or the color as I move around the paper, and then we can deepen up some of the areas, you know, as we kind of keep painting. Okay, so at this point we go in and start adding some kind of garden elements or floral elements into the background here. So you can see that I start out very softly into the background just with some kind of leaf motifs, and then I'm just thinking about some of these wildflowers that are dotting in the grass there, so kind of doing the stems and then just putting in the tops. I can't remember what these ones are called, but we painted them last year. But yeah, and so again then with the kind of garland leaf shapes at the top, I'm going back in like with different greens, and as this all dries as well, I'll continue to add colour. I think one of the best and kind of best kept secrets or most kind of effective ways to deepen up your paintings is to continue to add colour here while it's wet. You can keep doing this a few times. Usually I'll do it like 3 or 4 times, and a little bit of practice will kind of help you to know when to stop. But yeah, like there's a point where, you know, it gets a bit too dry to keep doing it. But for a while there, it's quite nice to continue to add colour back in until you get it to the kind of tonal range that you're looking for. And so even playing with scale, you can see here that I have made some kind of very smaller versions of the flower that we did, more abstracted. So again, like they're in the background, they're more blurred. And then adding in some of these leaves again. This time I am using sparkle green for them to give that little hint of something special kind of happening in the background, or like that kind of feeling when you're in the garden and the whole garden is just shining around you, kind of. You can really feel that nice feeling. You know, there might be a particular branch that you saw, or flower or leaf or petal, and these are the types of things you can kind of put in here. You can see here I'm going back and I'm kind of trying to move around where I've put the shapes in before and add in colour around that, so you get kind of this multi-layered effect. Again, we're trying to build up these kind of nice areas and passages, almost like an old tapestry. And so again, I've let this little part dry a little bit, then I'm going back in with a different green and kind of adding to that. I'll also at this point like check the shapes, maybe change things a little bit. You can lift parts out if you're not happy with it. You can just add in like more watercolors, so you could make it a really fuzzy kind of blurry effect in an area. If you're not liking what's happening, add a drop of ink there and let that kind of fan out. So there's like lots of different ways. This is really experimental and working on and thinking about how to control water, but just in a really fun way. Some of the flowers that we have coming up will be quite more advanced, and so this is a nice way to just start this process of thinking about all these different like compositional elements. And it's been quite nice at the end of the day to kind of do this. You can see here, like, one of the things I've been enjoying is just putting colour in, putting water in, letting that do its own thing on the page, adding more colour into that colour, or more sparkle in. You can see there that's more like tone on tone, but you can do different colours and water in the middle as well. And I also often like to just put in either some of the colours that I'm using, just little colour swatches or colour mixes, things like that as well. So once I think I have kind of all the elements there that I'm looking for, I'll go back in with maybe some darker areas, just to kind of sort of my darkest parts that I want to put on there. And just kind of finishing it up. I'll put any little extra finishing touches there, and maybe put a little bit more detail into the flower. And then I will work on the emblem. So I often like to use gold ink, or this is a holographic gold watercolor, and then I use some of this. And you can see here again, I am not being too precious with how that's going on. And then, but I am using a really tiny brush. It really does help to use a brush that's suited for the paper that and the sort of size and the scale that you're working at. So then I just use the Copic warm grey for some of that. But you can also do this on really large pieces of paper if that's how you work. And again, just you would use larger brushes and things like that. But yeah, you can see here kind of the different ones that I have been using. This would also be really nice. You know, some people like to kind of wipe their brush off before they rinse it and things like that. This would be a nice thing to have a piece of paper there just to do something like that. So we've done one that's a little bit more structured, and we had the wet on dry to begin with, but let me show you how I just started these. There was no emblem, there was no kind of structured flower to start with. It was basically just me putting water on a piece of paper, and you can use scrap pieces of paper, you know, but I would just put a colour down. This one I'm using Daniel Smith Sugarlight and the Wallace and Seymour Blue John. So I'm going for more of a kind of muted, moody palette. And then I'm putting in again one of these kind of very abstracted sort of the side profile of the flower. So you can see how the watercolor is already kind of moving within the wash that we've already put on the page, and that's how we get a really nice soft line. And yeah, it makes it feel quite atmospheric and really lovely. This is where you'll learn about your pigments too. Like, for example, I would never do this with nickel azo yellow because you will not be able to control it. It will just kind of take over the page. So you'll find that some of your pigments are more suited to this technique. Yep, and if you do find that one is going out of control, you can blot that up with some paper towel and just, you know, start again. It will all add to kind of the mystery and the mood of these little pieces. And then again, you can see I'm doing the same thing with the leaves, but I'm using some sort of different greens, a little bit of a brighter kind of mint green, and again putting those next to each other so that you can see both greens and they start to shine through. Again, then I'm finishing with the darkest green, and then I'm just putting in some other kind of colors, some swatches, and these kind of stem shapes. We've had so many bees kind of just around lately, so yep, I have kind of just been thinking about that as well, so I feel like that sort of snuck into the painting there. And yeah, just I'm not really painting anything particular here. I'm just thinking about color, shapes. I'm putting a little bit of ink in, and I'm really kind of looking at kind of what the different pigments are doing, how they work together. You can see here, so this is my second time of dropping in colour there onto the stem and the leaves, so I'll do that several times to get it to the saturation that I'm looking for. Also, this is a really nice way to just think about colour palettes. Would this colour work? And you can drop a little bit in, you could take it out if you want, you could add another colour on top of it. So there's kind of a lot of learning going on in just a really, really enjoyable end of day paint session. Sometimes, like here, I added water and then I'm just kind of moving the pigment into that watery area. And then this was still quite wet, so I was just adding more pigment in there. And then again, I'm going in with this tiniest brush and putting in the darkest parts of these stem and the leaves again. But you can see that the paper's quite wet. So even though I'm using the small brush, where it's quite wet, it's allowing that pigment to flow. So again, it's quite an interesting thing to see. So here you can see I'm using the Daniel Smith watercolor sticks. Again, you can use Inktense pencils or sticks. You could use the Neo colors. Yeah, and I'm just looking at kind of how that would build into this type of thing. Should I use it wet? Should I use it dry over the top? All these kinds of things are really interesting to think about and learn and look at while you're doing something like this. So yeah, and I really love the way that the everything kind of softens out. So again, these are types of things that will go into your stylistic choices. Like, do you prefer hard edges? Do you prefer softer, kind of that flow? But then this will also help you in times when you're thinking about a composition and you might be wanting to structure it a certain way. Then when you have all these techniques, you can kind of use them at different times and to help you kind of work out different elements of the painting. So yeah, hopefully this is quite helpful. You can see here another really, this is like a maybe 11 by 15. This is from the Stonehenge watercolor pad, and yep, I did the same thing. So I put some of the flowers down first. I think maybe I did all the flowers first, just little fragments of the flowers as well, maybe a petal, maybe some of the petals, looking at the sort of structure and the shapes, the colors of those flowers, and then I just put a background kind of in around that and behind that, and sort of let that overlap onto some of the flowers. And by this stage, after a couple of weeks, there was a little garden forming of its own, it kind of just on my desk. So again, it's a really nice way to kind of think through things and build up this little repertoire of garden fractals. I feel like it can also help you kind of develop how you want to depict something, and even sort of like in the smaller, more abstracted ones, it's almost like a floral shorthand, and then we have the more elaborate ones. Yeah, but I also wanted to try this with some sort of magnolias, so we won't paint those that much this year. I think we'll mainly work on tulips, irises, some wildflowers. We might do anyway. We'll see. But yeah, they so. But I just wanted to kind of put down a background here, and then do sort of think about the magnolias from last year. So it does have this similar shape that we've been working on, but with less petals, and the scale's a bit different. So these petals are a little bit more elongated. They may not sort of overlap as much as well. Yeah, so it's just interesting to think about also small differences and how that can affect the overall shape of like the flower or kind of what you're trying to portray there. But I think the video is about to wrap up, so I am, let's see, in 2 weeks we'll do the tulip video. It may even need to be 2 videos. It's quite in-depth. And then, but next week I'll see if I can come back with another short kind of small video. So about painting outside. We'll either do that kind of before or after the tulip one. And then we will work on some irises and things. So anyway, I hope you are having a lovely week, and I will see you soon. Bye.